Good morning. Good morning. As we kick off here on this Monday morning, I've made the statement that this is kind of, let's see, I don't know what else to call it, decision week. Usually, what I do is I take the week of Thanksgiving, shut completely down for the week of different. Don't take on any tasks during that week, and I used to plan out my coming year. Now, last year I did that, and nobody had anticipated what 2020 was going to be like, and that's okay. Nobody really had to anticipate what that was going to be like, and that's all right. But my point is this, that one of the things that I want to do is I want to take this morning and share with you, I'm in the process of making a really important decision, and that decision has to do with these bucket talks. I have watched, one of the good things about Facebook is it brings up your history every year. And so you get the chance to see back what's been going on. And I have been doing live feeds now for 4.5 years. Ever since the app became available on your phone, I preferred to do them from that direction. And I've added some other software and some other things along the way as we've done this. But the thing that I want to say is that I'm beginning to question the effectiveness of Facebook being able to make available to the public your information. And I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste your time. I want to make the most use of the time that's available. But sometimes it becomes important to make a decision. Do you continue to do something that you've done forever? And I've done this now for over 4 years. Every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I have done a live feed. Now, I've skipped a few times because I was out of voice, a couple out on vacation, gone someplace, that kind of thing. But for the most part, that comes to a whole bunch of live feeds a year. Just if I hit those days, that's over 200. And that's an awful lot of time to go live. So I was going back and I was using a piece of software, I was clicking through that to see what kind of content that I had that I might want to share in another place or across a different platform. And I'm really struggling. Do I continue to do these Facebook Lives or do I do this as a podcast? With Facebook Live, you have this interaction. You have this kind of interaction. With a podcast, you don't have that. But I do have some things that would make the podcast work very effective. And so I'm really considering that. I have done over 100 podcasts before in the past. So it's not like this is something brand new. I used to take just this live feeds and put them in as a form of a podcast. The problem with that is that sometimes I would do these live from my yard, which is okay if you're watching a video. It's terrible if you're listening to it as a podcast. So there's some decisions to be made. You may or may not see me the rest of the week because I'm kind of in that decision-making process. I have set up my podcast catcher so that I can begin to capture information and put that into a podcast and make it available to the public. But I'm beginning to wonder that podcast might be a more effective way of doing this. I'm looking at my news feeds on Facebook, and I'm seeing that I had 300, 400, 500 viewers of videos in the past, and today I might have 50. And so again, you get back to you evaluate, you weigh those things out. Which of these two is going to be the most effective way of reaching people? Either that means that my content has declined, and I hope that's not true. My audience has declined, and I know that that's true because Facebook isn't sending out notifications for everybody as they should be and as they have been in the past. And so I'm not being discovered in that way. And I'm wondering if my time might be better spent focusing my attention on, this is a kind of a demanding sort of a platform, and podcasts are not. You have the opportunity to edit and do all that cool kind of stuff. So I'm really in the process of considering which of those two do I do going forward. And so in my typical November fashion, I'll probably take a week and make a decision. I'll weigh out those factors and so on. What that would mean isn't that I would never go live in Facebook again. What that means is that I would do my Facebook Lives kind of spontaneously. And you've seen a lot of those where I've gone live in the park, or I've gone live in the parking lot, or I've gone live from inside my car, or I've gone live from inside the airport. Don't do the airport thing anymore. But a lot of times I've done those kinds of things so that I could just kind of pop in, say what was going on, pop back out. And I think I'll probably switch to that method for a regular scheduled thing. I'm a morning person. Not everybody is, but I'm a morning person. I like to get up and get started early in the morning, and I like to be at it early in the day. And then this live feed, this regularly scheduled 9 o'clock live feed, disrupted that flow that happens, which is more important the older I get and the slower I go at doing things. So I'm just really taking careful consideration as to how do I want to do this going forward. So I thought I would let you know that I will anytime I go live, I'll make an announcement like I do now. And let you know ahead of time. Sometimes it's 15 minutes ahead of time. Sometimes it's 3 hours. But just to give you an update as to what's happening, probably put a little more focus on groups and a little less focus on my personal profile, because that's not being discovered as much as it used to be. So I'm just really in the process of kind of weighing this out. I've got 4 people live now, and I can remember when I would go live and I'd have 44 people that would be watching. And so you struggle with that. Not that you are not important, because you are. You who are watching now are extremely important to me. And I would do this if there was only one. And I had thought at one time that I was going to stop doing it. And then I discovered that there was one person watching, and I wouldn't stop doing it because she was watching. And that one person was a lady in our church who had Alzheimer's, and she really struggled with connection with anything, but she would recognize my face and she would recognize my voice. And she didn't know who I was, but she would recognize the face and she'd recognize the voice. And that was meaningful to her. She looked forward to that every day. So I continued to do it, and I stayed in there and continued to do it. And so it's just time for me to think about the best way to do this. And yes, the text captions on the live feeds are coming from StreamYard. That's the reason why I really like using StreamYard, because it does do the text captions. And but I will make a decision as to whether I'm going to just go to straight podcast. My wife had actually suggested that. I realized I was getting a much bigger audience when I was doing just straight podcast. And so I probably will give a careful consideration to that in the future. But like I said, this week, and I try to take a week when I make those kinds of decisions and not make them on the fly and not make them spontaneously. So that's probably what I'll do going forward. All right. Nothing new for you. I do want to say something about the American Diabetes Association and the fact that this is Diabetic Awareness Month, Type 1 Diabetes Awareness Month, and how important that is that we let people know how serious this disease really is. It's different, and there's now type 3 diabetes, and I don't know, there's all kinds of weird conditions that they're pre-diabetic and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about the person who either does this repeatedly during the course of the day, or they die. And that's what I'm talking about. And that's what kids end up with at very early ages, and they struggle because it's complicated disease, and it brings in some difficult things. And nobody, and let me say this again, nobody understands this like the person who's going through it. The person who's going through it is the important piece of that puzzle, because they're the ones who have to deal with this on a regular basis. And you're not going to find out about it by watching a video. You're not going to find out about it by going to med school. But you will find out about it if you live it. So the person who goes through that journey with you, when you're the diabetic, I have a great niece who has been diagnosed with diabetes a while back, and she's very young, and her parents are going to go through this with her. And I've had people who've gone through this with me. The people who go through it with you will never understand your experience. They won't. But we need to be more tolerant. We need to be more understanding of people who really, you can't see this. You look at me, you wouldn't know I had it. You look at my lifestyle, you wouldn't know I had it. but I struggle with it. Struggle with it a lot. And so I say that because you need to be aware of the person who has it and the person who's going through it with them. They will never experience the same things, just will not experience the same things. Someday I may actually do a storytelling and let you know the weird things that have happened to me over the course of my life because of diabetes. But things like I came to in my car and my shoes are laying on the dashboard and my headlights are facing out across a pond and I don't know where I am and I don't know how I got there. I'm just thankful that I was alive. Someday I may tell all those stories. I may put them all together in one spot, may even do a podcast with that. But those are important things to understand. You say, my wife's trying to find me. She's trying to call. She doesn't know where I'm at. I'm an hour and a half late getting home. And that's where I found myself. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff that you go through when you do this. And it's not anything that anyone understands. And it's easy to say, well, you did this. I didn't do anything that day. I didn't do anything that I hadn't done every other day. And that's what happens. Just understand this is a complicated disease. This is the month that we make people aware of it. This is when we talk about kissing a pig, because a pig was where they discovered the enzyme insulin that makes your body function properly. And without it, you die. It's quite simply, that's what happens. The disease in Latin literally means you waste away. And that's what happens to you. So having said that, I just wanted to make just a reminder, when you see those posters, you see that stuff up, be glad that they're there. Be glad that they're there. Had I not seen a poster, and I say this over and over again, every year I say the same thing. If I had not seen that poster, I probably would have died. But I saw the poster and realized that at 15 years old, I'm going to have to take responsibility for my health. And I've been trying to do that ever since. So, juvenile diabetes, type 1 diabetes, it is time to be aware of that, okay? It is important that we understand in our world today what that really means. And we're not talking about people who need a little help along the way. It is, you're exactly right, Emma. We almost take it for granted. It's like, and it's because we've added these other things to type 1 diabetes. These are people who have problems processing sugar that goes into their body. This person doesn't make insulin. There's a difference between those two worlds. Unfortunately, they've kind of gotten grouped together. And so the complication factors that are with the first kind, the type 1 diabetic, are very different than everything else. And you cannot confuse those two, nor can you ever take them for granted. So I may devote just an exclusive time to just talk about that and make that available if you wanted to, if somebody might want to share that. I think that might be helpful. I'm at almost 50 years now as a diabetic. So as that clock continues to tick and I continue to be in a smaller and smaller number as I go, it's kind of important, okay? The best, Emma's going to, I'm just going to have to say it. Okay. So, type 2 is supposedly managed by diet and exercise. Most type 2 diabetics don't choose to take charge. That's true. Somebody said this to me the other day. So I didn't really understand the difference between the two. And so I was thinking about how do I illustrate the difference between these two. It's like the type, and I say this as carefully as I know how, the type 2 diabetic is the guy who's walking down the street and stops every once in a while and smacks his head into the wall and says, I'm having a problem with smacking my head into the wall. And that's the type 2 diabetic. There's some things you can do to stop smacking your head into the wall. That's the point that he's making. Type 1 diabetic is the person who's walking down the street and the wall fell on them. Yeah, I think that's a pretty clear illustration of the difference between the two. And if you're a type 1, you take care of yourself or you die. It's not complicated. It's really not. And so enough of that. I don't want to be critical about people who have one or the other or whatever. I just want this type 1 diabetes is in a special category. It's different than everything else. And it's important that you understand what it is, because there's a world of difference between the two. We the same umbrella and we expect everything to be treated exactly the same. And in type 1, you have no choice. You wake up one day and you're sick, and you're really sick. And I remember as a 15-year-old kid sitting in drafting class and looked up at the board and I could not see anything. And it's because my blood sugar was so high, I could not see the board in front of me. And I had no choice. I literally had no choice. And in the span of about 3 weeks, I lost 45 pounds, and it was a struggle, just to be quite honest with you. So I say that because I think it's important that we become aware of it, that we understand that there is a difference. We don't lump them together. It's the reason why I really like the folks that I know that are putting the emphasis on T1D today rather than just calling it diabetes. It's type 1 diabetes. That's what I've called for years, the real diabetes. It's a real disease. It's a real problem that can only be treated by the injection of insulin into your system. It's the only way to treat it. All right, enough of that. Again, not making it about me, but yeah, the type 1 literally controls me. And so when you choose how to control that, when you take charge of that, as you have to do, your life from that point becomes different. And that's the point that I'm trying to make today, is that we have a bunch of people who are walking around who aren't walking around without this, I promise you. And when they do, they have some semblance of control. And I'm very, very thankful that we have that today. And that's why we celebrate Kiss a Pig. Yes, Emma, I'm glad to be talking to you again. As a matter of fact, I'd like to talk to you sometime if you get a chance. All right. Thank you all for joining me today as I ramble on about two things. One is my decision to make this a podcast or leave it as this live feed on called Bucket Talks. I'll probably call the podcast Bucket Talks as well. But and the other thing was just trying to make people aware of this matter of type 1 diabetes. Okay. All right. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to talking to you soon.